all fine. But yeah, so the interesting thing is for public deployments, when you want to have consumers in businesses interacting with it, you want it to be robust. So it is strong enough that, you know, as a point of reference, you could take a bottle from here, drop it, and you'll have no impact on the screen.
So it's Gorilla Glass?
It's Gorilla Glass.
Okay.
You won't find a larger piece of Gorilla Glass anywhere. That's commercially available, right? But I think the interesting thing about it is if you feel it, if you put your hand on it, it seems a little warm, but that's because we haven't finished thermal testing on it. Once we finish thermal testing, it'll be optimal. The other thing what this product doesn't have is if you look at any touch device right now, it's pretty smudgy, right, because of your fingerprint. But we're going to put a layer of something called Easy Clean on it that'll enable it to be a lot better than that.
Will that fade in time or?
Which one?
The Easy Clean.
No, it won't.
Okay.
Yeah, it's actually a part of the manufacturing process, right? Because if you put it after, you can see that happening. It's because it's a part of the manufacturing process, you won't see that.
Okay.
So we call this the track screen. The other thing on there is if a hard flash hits it, it's going to go a little crazy because it's reacting to infrared light. However, when we finish the software, what you're going to see is we would finish ambient light cancellation. So you could put it in a public place, not direct sunlight, but say a shop or anything like that, and you wouldn't have an issue with the performance.
Doesn't really detect fingernails.
No, it doesn't.
Okay.
Right now it doesn't.
Okay.
Our touch is not completed as yet. We're still working on finessing the software and locking it. But the other thing we've also done is we've made sure there's protection for liquids. So if liquids fall in it, it's absolutely fine. It's got like a 12-hour protection built into it. There is something magical when you start taking real-world objects and trying to connect it with content, right? So one of the things that we should do. Now if I apply a little bit of gravity, right? So this is showing you the flexibility of the SDK. So developers now actually have the power to do some really amazing things with it.
Okay, so you can go over there if it's a bit too crowded here.
Right? So now you can think about if you start taking real world objects and placing it on top of it, what really actually happens. You can do something, add a little magnetic field. Right? And wherever I move it, right? So you can think about, you know, how we can build some really cool consumer experiences in retail businesses or banks or hospitals or whatever. Right? Education is another place where. So this is just a quick example of what you do. But to show you about the Royal Bank of Canada is one of our launch customers. And one of the things that the bank was having a challenge with is not allowing, enough people don't go and visit a branch, right? Because you do everything online. However, the beauty about this is the bank has a location and it wants people to come in. But once you come into the bank, then I can sell you specific products and services. So one of the things the bank did was, this is an actual mailer that the Royal Bank of Canada sent to the local community it was in. Typically when you do a mailer like this, the conversion rate is 2%. The Royal Bank of Canada is seeing a conversion rate right now of more than 10%. So it invites you to come and just drop the mailer onto the device, and you're entered into a sweepstakes because it's got a unique code in here, right? So the camera is able to look at the code, react, and give you an associated reaction. In this case, the person's won some money. What we wanted to do is basically try and showcase to you what you can do with search, right? But using real-world objects. So, say for example, I was a retailer that had like a lot of inventory products. Shoes, I think, is one where you can't actually merchandise shoes in a store in a very effective way if you really wanted to show everything to somebody, right? So one of the things we're doing, it's a little, like, not completed this as yet, but the interesting thing is I put a real-world object, I look through my, here it's looking at the web, but you can make it look through your database of all your shoes, right? And now I can browse and look at all these shoes. But browsing is just one part of it, right? It's great to browse, but how do you make that content sticky? So with the power of tags, and with just a camera phone, if you just had a simple tag reader, the content's right there. Now think about if you can actually embed a URL for a website. Then you have the full transaction. You search, you share with somebody, and then you can transact potentially. Like say if this was a shoe that my partner liked and she wanted to buy it, I could potentially buy it directly from the phone, right? But it's also about saying how you can make the content sticky. So it's a cool way to search, but it's an immersive experience, right? The other thing, this is just social. You can think about just a game. But the key thing is there's no device that enables, you know, a few people to collaborate. We always talk about like sharing and collaborating and doing things, but there's nothing that enables you to do it. You can go ahead. Just the goal here is to make sure you place your things in the line of fire so you can collect currency, right? And then the other thing we're focusing on is this whole concept about multi-channel marketing. What's happening is a lot of brands want people to be able to start doing things at home, but they want them to come into the store to finish the transaction. So a lot of this information is already stored in the cloud. So say this was my loyalty card, and you come into the store and you drop it there. Oops. It's a sales card. So these were the two devices that I actually, these are some of the devices that I was exploring at home. So now I come into the store and I want to ask the salesperson a couple of questions. Now, if you look at it, these are pretty close in terms of like features, right? They're both 1080p, one's an LED, one's a 3D, but what's the real difference? So you come back into the store to have a more meaningful conversation with the salesperson, right? So we have something called a compare bar where you can actually start making an apples to apples comparison of the product. Now the customer can actually make a better buying decision because he's actually comparing the same things, right? Any questions? So just some specs on the thing. It's a dual-core AMD processor, 2.9 gigahertz dual-core processor. It's got a GPU that's 1 gig. So it can really render pictures with high quality exploiting the 1080p high def. 4 gigs of standard RAM expandable to 8. And then 320 gig hard drive. And it's a computer at the end of the day, right?
Any built-in speakers?
Pardon?
Speakers?
Yes, it's got Dolby surround sound and 5 speakers. Yeah, and that's the interesting thing, right? All of that's wrapped into 4 inches. And if you actually look at the LCD panel, it's this big. So there's a real cool innovation that's gone on here to deliver this.
Any external ports? Or?
Yes, it's got HDMI out. If you have a look down here, it gives you a bunch of USBs. It gives you SD cards, power. And this same device, you can remove the legs. You can use standard Visa mounts that you use for a TV and hang it on the wall. In addition to that, what it also can tell you is it can tell you exactly what angle this is on. So thereby the kind of app or the application experience can be determined based on the way you're deploying it.
Is it running on Windows 7 or is it?
No, it's Windows 7.
Windows 7.
Standard, it's Visual Studios 2010, .NET 4.0, WPF 4.0, XLA 4.0, and Windows 7.
So for the card that you just put down there, right, is it using any special RFID or anything like that?
Okay, great question. So what we're using for object recognition right now is bite-sized tags. These are just standard tags that basically different combinations you can get. However, we also understand that people already have their own loyalty cards, NFC readers, or different, personalization mechanisms in place. So for that, we've provided USB ports, so you can put whatever card reader you want.
So for the object recognition, let's say for example my fingers, right? Is it if I put it down, it detects my fingers as object 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or something like that.
Correct.
And when I lift it up, does it and put it back down again? Does it redetect it at the same fingers, or will it be different fingers?
It could be different fingers. Actually, it's looking at two things. It's looking at fingers, but it's also looking at the XY orientation and exactly which direction it's coming from. So actually, if you think about the amount of memory of vision data it processes at a given time, it processes more than 1 gigabyte of vision data every second. So it knows exactly where you're coming in from, it knows exactly the orientation, it knows exactly the XY coordinates. In addition, if I move my hand from here to here, it's tracking the same finger. It is not thinking it's a new finger, right? Because at 60 hertz a second, it's actually flashing it to see what's on top of the screen. You'll notice a little bit of drag right now, but that's only because our software is not locked. If you've seen Surface One, the experience from a touch perspective is fantastic. This will be definitely at that level.
So when you use the shoe to actually search for the shoe,
Yeah.
is it also still using the same,
Yes.
what do you call that?
It's the buy tag.
The buy tag.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
You know, the interesting thing about it is if you're really, you can also do shapes, right? You can potentially take a shape and say anything you see of that size, give me an associated reaction. So there are different ways in which you can do the object recognition piece. But the fact that you can actually bridge real-world objects with digital data, there's something magical about that. You know, the thing is, I look at touch solutions and I say, touch is magical. Everyone has touch, you know, but how do you differentiate it? We've been in the market since 2008. There's nobody who really is able to do that, right? So I think we have something here that I think is set up in a really good way for adoption. It's basically at our crossroads right now. You know, we've got a great provider, hardware provider in Samsung. We have a good ecosystem of partners, and I think the product's ready to go.